Chapter 2. I, Enoch's silent brother, watched the arrival of the monster, standing on a low mesa. As a spirit, I could not feel the warm breeze or smell the blood from the boar, yet I could imagine such sensations as I watched. Just as the boar was not aware of the cat, and the cat was not aware of the monster was not aware that I watched. I am no threat to the monster. Only my brother can face him, as our ancestors have decided. The stories were all true, even though they were of the future. Like the big cat, at the time of the monster's arrival, my brother was also unaware of many things, including his destiny. But soon he would be forced to face his true nature. Due east, 2 miles from where the cat had hunted, Cole Army Base filled a round valley, tucked under surrounding mesas and low rolling hills. The lights of the base pushed back the night, covering the nearby desert with a faint orange and white glow. Corporal Enoch Nakai stood at ease in front of Sergeant Coates' desk, listening as the sergeant mumbled something about a duty roster and shuffled through a pile of papers on the corner of the old wooden desk. Nakai had never been in the sergeant's office that late at night, and the room seemed even smaller than normal. The place was about 5 degrees too hot, and tonight was no exception. The walls had a dingy yellow tint, and everything reeked of cigar smoke. A picture of the president hung crookedly on one wall, revealing a clean patch behind the frame, making the room's filth even more apparent. Nakai liked the open air and cool winds of the desert. He couldn't imagine why any man would keep himself cooped up in such a room. Here it is, the sergeant said, yanking a paper out of the pile. Nakai knew, without a doubt, what the sergeant was going to say. Nakai's 3-day leave had been cancelled. Again. There was no other reason the sergeant would have called him in this close to lights out. I'm afraid I've got to cancel your leave, Corporal, the sergeant said, right on cue. I need you on tank duty tomorrow morning, sharp. Nakai remained at ease, although he could feel his muscles tense. This leave was important to him. He had made promises he thought he could deliver on. He had figured that the Sarge could pick on him only for so long. Apparently, he was wrong. Sir, Nakai said, I put in for that leave 3 weeks ago. The sergeant shrugged and tossed the paper back on top of the pile. No one ever said the army was going to be perfect, did they, Corporal? There was no hope, Nakai knew, of changing the sergeant's mind. The man had no intention of letting him go. No, sir, Nakai said, keeping his face calm and without a sign of emotion. He had practiced such an expression hundreds of times in front of mirrors, and he knew exactly what it looked like. He wouldn't give the sergeant even a hint of emotion to fuel his petty game. Permission to be excused, sir. The sergeant hesitated for just a moment, then nodded. Granted. Nakai spun and left, moving quickly out of the command barracks. He felt as if he would suffocate in there. That tiny office stank like the Sarge. Nakai inhaled a lungful of fresh desert air, just laced with the night's chill, and then blew out the foul stench of the Sarge's office. The small ritual, usually effective, didn't help, and Nakai knew why. He was nervous. Alda was going to be really mad at him, even though this wasn't his fault. She had been planning for this leave for weeks, and she didn't take a change in plans well at all. She never had. And he had made this one worse by promising. When would he learn? Alda worked as a waitress at Ben's saloon in the small town of Agate, New Mexico, about 40 minutes from the base. Like Nakai, she was native, with long black hair and dark eyes that seemed to look right through a person. At best, she stood no more than 5 feet tall and didn't weigh more than a wet horse blanket. Yet she was the strongest and most powerful woman he had ever met. No one at Ben's messed with her. For some reason that Nakai couldn't fathom, she loved him and had stuck with him through the worst of his drinking and his first year in the service. And every time he got really down or started dwelling on the dark memories of his early days as an orphan, she would find a way to bring him back to the present. She was the best thing that had ever happened to him, and he knew it. He did his best not to screw things up, and somehow that wasn't enough. He was going to have to cancel out on yet another leave. She wasn't going to understand. His stomach twisted, and he felt a familiar thirst. Instead, he clenched his fist and rehearsed what he would say. He closed his eyes for a brief moment. It would sound like he was making excuses. She hadn't believed him the last time. She had exacted the promise then, and like an idiot, he had made it. "I won't plan anything with you if it's not for sure, Alda. I promise that my next leave will happen. We'll do anything you want." Yeah, anything, except be together. He cursed the sergeant silently. Army life could be so good, under the right commander. Nakai had seen it. He had seen how a well-run unit behaved. But the Sarge was not the right leader for him. The man delighted in making Nakai miserable, and even when Nakai didn't show his misery, the Sarge somehow knew. Nakai glanced at his watch. He had 15 minutes until lights out. Time for one quick call. The evening air swirled around him as he cut across the open ground in the center of the camp and into the mess. Inside, the heat of the day lingered, and the place actually felt humid. It smelled of grease and onions, with a faint stench of the abomination that the base called tacos. The tables were clean, but no one had washed the floor yet. Bits of meat and lettuce mixed with the dirt from unpolished boots. Only 2 other soldiers were at the bank of phones along the mess wall. Nakai headed for the phone farthest on the left and dialed the saloon. Ben answered. Nakai greeted him, and Ben didn't respond. Instead, he banged the receiver on a nearby surface and shouted over the muttered bar sounds. "It's your soldier boy!" Nakai leaned against the payphone's sturdy metal frame. He heard faint laughter through the phone line, then the blare of an old Elvis tune from the jukebox. The receiver clattered. "Enoch," Alda said, worry in her voice. "Is everything all right?" "No," Nakai said, the anger coming out a little more and a little louder than he would have liked. "My leave is cancelled." There was a moment of silence. He braced himself. "Oh no," Alda said faintly. "Not again." "Again," Nakai said. "It's been almost 2 months," Alda said. "I was really looking forward to seeing you." "Look," Nakai said, forcing himself to take a deep breath. "Don't be mad. I'm not mad," Alda said. "Just disappointed." Her response surprised him. She usually didn't react to change so well, but she had known of his struggles here, and she had been supporting him in all he did. His anger at the Sarge grew. It wasn't fair. He could almost hear the Sarge's voice in his head. Whoever said army life would be fair? No one. But a man deserved leave every once in a while. "I'm disappointed too," Nakai said through clenched teeth. "And I'm angry." "Don't be," Alda said. "We'll be together our entire lives. We can get through this." Nakai didn't know what to say to that. He closed his eyes and leaned his forehead against the payphone's cool metal. He had braced himself for the worst, and it hadn't happened. He had to stop misjudging Alda. She was the most amazing woman in the world, and he had to be the luckiest guy in the world to have her. "Enoch?" she asked. "Are you all right?" He opened his eyes and stood up. "I'm better, now." "Good." He glanced at his watch. There was still a little time before he had to get back to the barracks. If he concentrated, he could pretend he was talking to Alda in person, instead of on the phone. He asked her how her day had gone, and as she told him, he listened to the warmth in her voice, the warmth she had always had when she spoke to him, the warmth he never wanted to lose. They talked as long as they could. Nakai timed the conversation to the second to get the most out of it. Then, at a quick run, he made it back to the barracks with a full minute before lights out.